The MSI GF63 appears to be a more budget-friendly gaming laptop, but how hot does it get, and is there any throttling? In this video, I'll perform some detailed thermal testing and find out how overclocking and undervolting can help improve performance and temperatures. In my configuration here, I've got the Intel i7-8750H CPU and NVIDIA GTX 1050 Ti Max-Q graphics, so expect different results with the 1050 version. Thermal testing was completed with an ambient room temperature of 23 degrees Celsius, so expect warmer temperatures in a warmer environment. Also keep in mind there are heat pipes shared between processor and graphics, so a change in one component may affect the other. It's also worth noting that both the CPU and GPU are cooled by just one fan, so let's see how well it does. Starting at the bottom of the graph, at idle the temperatures are warmer than average, shown by the light blue bars. The gaming tests were done with Watch Dogs 2, as I find that to use a good combination of CPU and GPU. Continuing up in the green bar, both the CPU and GPU reach 91 degrees Celsius with the fans at default speeds. By enabling Cooler Boost mode to max out the fans, shown by the yellow bar, temperatures drop back significantly. With the fans back at stock speed, but with a minus 0.120 volt undervolt applied to the CPU, shown in orange, it's a little cooler compared to gaming at stock in the green bar. When we combine the CPU undervolt with MSI's Cooler Boost mode in the red bar, we see the coolest temperatures while gaming, with both the CPU and graphics in the mid-70s, a nice improvement. The stress tests were done by running Ada64 and the Heaven benchmark at the same time, in order to attempt to fully utilize both the processor and graphics. Continuing up in the graph with the dark red bar, I was seeing the combined CPU and GPU load limit of the CPU to a 35 watt TDP, and there was both thermal and power limit throttling taking place on the CPU, and thermal throttling on the GPU. With Cooler Boost mode enabled with the stress tests running, shown by the pink bar, there's a big improvement to the temperatures. This stops thermal throttling, but power limit throttling was still present. The CPU undervolt with the fans at stock speeds, shown in purple, wasn't enough to cool the components. And then with the undervolt and Cooler Boost mode enabled together at the top of the graph in the dark blue bar, we get a little improvement in CPU temperature. These are the average clock speeds for the same tests just shown. Again, starting down the bottom, we can see that the CPU clock speeds raise the most when the CPU undervolt is applied, shown by the orange and red bars, as this helps reduce the power limit throttling. It's worth noting though that in all of these combined CPU and GPU tests, the 8750H wasn't able to hit the full 3.9 GHz turbo speed, although it does get very close in gaming with the minus 0.12 volt undervolt applied to the CPU with the fans in Cooler Boost mode, shown by the red bar. We also see improvements to the graphics clock speed when we turn Cooler Boost mode on, and this is because the graphics were often experiencing thermal throttling with a single fan at default speeds. These are the clock speeds I got while just running CPU-only stress tests without any GPU load. Without the undervolt, the power limit throttling was preventing a CPU-only stress test from reaching the 3.9 GHz turbo speed of the 8750H, but this was possible once undervolted, shown by the green bar. To demonstrate how this translates into performance, I've got some Cinebench CPU benchmarks here, with the older 7th gen i7-7700HQ just down the bottom for comparison. While the CPU clock speeds were closer together in the previous graph, the Cinebench scores between stock and undervolted are quite different. This is because while running Cinebench, the CPU TDP was not passing 35 watts, while under the Ada64 stress test it was running at 45 watts. Here are the GPU-only clock speeds while under a graphical-only stress test, and we're seeing an improvement of around 126 MHz with a manual 200 MHz overclock applied. It didn't get further due to power limits. So how do these performance boosts actually translate into games? I've tested with the exact same Windows, NVIDIA, and game updates installed. The only changes were the ones listed here. Far Cry 5 was tested using the built-in benchmark. The average frame rates at ultra settings were 5.6% better compared to stock speeds. And there was also a little improvement to the 1% low results at other setting levels, though results will of course vary between games. As for the external temperatures where you'll actually be putting your hands, at idle it was in the low to mid 30s around the keyboard. While gaming, the middle of the keyboard gets to around 50 degrees and up to 56 right up the back. Very similar results with the stress tests running, and then a fair bit cooler once we enable Cooler Boost mode to max out the fans. but let's find out just how loud this gets. At idle, the fans were still slightly audible. While gaming and under stress test, it was about the same, and this was significantly quieter than most other gaming laptops I've tested. But as we saw before, the temperatures are suffering as a result with thermal throttling taking place. With cooler boost mode enabled and the single fan maxed out, it gets quite loud. Though as we saw earlier, this improves the temperatures quite a lot. Overall, the performance was acceptable once you boost the fans and apply a CPU undervolt, despite the single fan to keep it all cool. It's definitely the i7-8750H that's getting the temperatures up here. I think the 1050 Ti Max-Q graphics are just suffering due to the shared heat pipes. I'm not sure why MSI went with quieter fans at the expense of thermal throttling out of the box. Looking in the Dragon Center software, it looks like the fan is configured to only reach 55%. Although, as you heard, it was quieter than most other laptops I've tested while gaming as a result. However, I'd prefer it to be a little louder and not throttle or run as hot. At least you've got the option of adjusting the fans for yourself though. So you can improve this at the expense of more noise. As this is the highest spec version of the GF63 laptop, the results shown here should be a worst case scenario. The 8RC model is the same, but has 1050 graphics instead. So it may run a little cooler as it's not quite as powerful. It's hard to say though, as most of the heat seems to be coming from the 8750H CPU. These differences in performance shown aren't hard and fast rules. There are different factors which will vary results. Primarily the temperature of the room you're running in, application of thermal paste, and even the specific hardware, which comes down to the silicon lottery. You may not be able to undervolt or overclock your hardware the same as me. It depends on the chip and its specific power requirements, so don't just blindly copy my settings and do some testing to find out where your stable point is for best results. While you could improve the temperatures by swapping out the thermal paste, that's not something I can test in a review unit. If I go ahead and remove the stock thermal paste and replace my own, I can't put the old paste back. So the next reviewer would experience something different from what you would actually see with the product, and unknowingly report incorrect information due to what I've done. Undervolting and raising the fan speed, on the other hand, aren't physically intrusive. And as we've seen, it did improve temperatures and gaming performance a little in this particular unit, with no downside once you've got a stable undervolt. Let me know how much of a performance boost you've found by undervolting your hardware, and what you thought of the improvements here. And don't forget to subscribe for the full review of the MSI GF63 gaming laptop, as well as future tech videos like this one.